Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, and he will speak to us about Sephardim of Antwerp, financial connectors of the Hispanic monarchy in the 16th and 17th centuries. So the floor, Juan, is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for making this event possible and to those here present for their attention. The studies that I present here have their origin in a first work about the relationship between the Hispanic monarchy and the financiers of Judeo-convert origin in the decades of the 20s, 30s, and 40s of the 17th century. And in a later extension of these studies, which covers the development of the Sephardic community in Antwerp during the government of the Hispanic Habsburg monarchy over the Burgundy Circle between the 16th and 17th centuries, from its origins to its virtual dissolution. Following the model of the work made by Francesca Trivellato with the Sephardim of Livorno. Although the Sephardic diaspora can anchor its precedents beforehand, I focus on the events that occur after the expulsions of 1492 by the Catholic monarchs of Spain and that of 1497 by Dom Manuel I of Portugal, making this an Iberian affair. Because of these two expulsions, because of them, an important Sephardic contingent settled in the Netherlands at the beginning of the 16th century, and in particular in the city of Antwerp. Why here? After a period of revolts in the Netherlands, for various reasons, the city of Antwerp takes the place that the city of Roots was living as a leading economic center in the North Sea. It will be in the first half of the century when it will become the mercantile center of the European world. The contact in the city between the English and German markets, and in my opinion, especially its close and growing relationship with the Iberian world market, contribute decisively to this, principally because of the Portuguese monopoly on pepper, as well as the Castilian wool and its overseas products that were consumed there. The merchants of Sephardic Christian New Origin were an essential node of this system by possessing a series of skills and competitive advantages, such as an extraordinary command of a variety of languages and the usual possession of relatives in territories with different religious confessions, which allowed them to operate in territories so different, such as America, Ottoman Empire, Maghreb, and later the United Provinces. In the mid-16th century, the Sephardim, that had a large and sophisticated semi-Christianized commercial elite by then, with experience in financing long-distance travels and marketing capital-intensive products, but on the other hand, also they were grappled with the burden of having a lineage of Jewish origin within the Catholic monarchy, whether they had been kept in the law of Moses or not, which made them also vulnerable to political and religious powers or competitors. They were often in a relevant but also dangerous position, as it is shown in the Mendes case. The Mendes case were about two brothers of Iberian origin, main agents of the trust that buys the whole pepper from the King of Portugal to be resold in Antwerp. One of the two brothers was accused of being in touch with the Levantine Jews, monopolizing spices and professing Judaism himself. Maria of Hungary, who was governor of the Low Countries, then had him arrested in 1531 along with other rich merchants. This causes a great stir and division of opinions and actions in the city, as there are merchants who take it as an attack on their freedoms. It also endangers the benefit of Amberino people and the kings of Portugal themselves, who sent letters to his cousin, the Emperor Carlos, with the explicit request of freedom for madness. It also was accompanied by some cards, well, one card from the King of England. Mendes was finally released in 1536 after making a forced loan in favor of the emperor's coffers. In general terms, there is a period of very important growth of the city until 1566, when the great disturbances caused by the outbreak of the Protestant revolts occurred, initiating a time of enormous instability for the region and the city that changed hands in the next 2 decades. Until the definitive taking of the city by the troops of Farnese in 1585. This stage supposed an irreparable erosion in terms of human lives and material goods. The closing of the mouths of the Scheldt in 1595 was supposed to be the coup de grace for the local economy. It is here that traditionally the definitive decline of the Sephardic community in Antwerp has been marked. However, the normalization of the 17 provinces as the military arena of Europe also meant the constant arrival of large amount of cash and the impulse of local ship owners and carriers between they were sometimes also Sephardic businessmen who take care of some of these tasks. During this time, the Antwerp-Lisbon axis was losing importance for the mercantile communities that became more and more interested in the Seville-Madrid axis. Already in 1576, the Portuguese had credit in Antwerp thanks to the sale of spices, and they were looking forward to using it to pay asientos. Furthermore, after the union of the crown of Portugal in 1580 within the Spanish monarchy, their position was improved to participate both in the Indian race, the Portuguese and the Castilian, and the accounts of the crown, taking advantage of the fact that both Madrid and Brussels were trying to attract new moneylenders to replace those of the Genoese people. They were looking active commercial networks along the Atlantic routes. At the beginning of 1626, a plan from Brussels was presented to the Council of State to attract those Flemish and Portuguese merchant bankers from Antwerp to finance the war. A plan that was carried out in the form of asientos, and what leads the Amberino Sephardim to further close the turn towards the Antwerp axis, Lisbon, Madrid, Seville. This meeting involved an intense relationship that would last at least 2 decades, until it was weakened by the international situation created after the Westphalia Agreements in 1648 and the Prünnis Agreement in 1659. Once Westphalia had passed, classical historiography put the last nail on the relationship of the Hispanic monarchy with the Sephardic Jews, taking into account that this fact coincides with the succession of Portugal. However, this thesis has been questioned in recent years. In fact, the Sephardic financiers continue to diversify their businesses. One of the most interesting roles they go on to play is that of the diplomatic Jews, studied by Jonathan Israel. They were
Again, very sorry to interrupt, but the 10 minutes have also passed. So if you could come to a conclusion.
yes. I'm very near to this. Those characters were involved in the peace talks, as it is shown in the Schoenberg case studied by Manuel Herrera. Well, finally, this leads us to the second half of the 7th century, when a series of letters appears made by a group of Dutch Sephardim to the governor of the southern Netherlands, by then Leopold Wilhelm, to build a secret synagogue in Borgerhout, a suburb of Antwerp. To this are subsequently added a series of similar letters addressed to Leopold and his successors with the intention of enabling Jewish communities or facilitating their stay in the southern Netherlands. This indicates to us the firmness of the possibility that in Antwerp, the community, not only Sephardic but crypto-Jewish, was far from disappearing. Moreover, this community would be the alternative center to Amsterdam used by the Sephardic Jews in the region. The thesis that I hope to be able to explore in greater depth in the future. So far, my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And then it's time to open up the floor for questions. So perhaps you could stop sharing the screen. Yes, and then we see everybody so that I can see whether there's somebody who has a question. And Amal, I see your hand raised.
Yes, Villa, I have a question for Juan Lorenzo. According to the last part that you said, it was an interesting presentation, and the last thing that you mentioned was something about the synagogue in Borgerhout. Do you have more information about that? Is that still something that exists or not anymore?
Well, it was a plan made by a very important Jew who commerced between Holland and the southern Netherlands. And it was supposed to create a synagogue, a domestic synagogue, in his own house. It was offered to Leopold, and he asked permission to the King of Spain, to Philip IV. But the church mediated, and it was not possible. But at the end, factually, these informal reunions were sure made because the family of this merchant had a specific permission to practice their belief. Is that the answer?
Yes. Any other questions for our speakers? Karen.
I have a question for Dagmara. The very first Esther scroll you showed us, it was written and decorated by